You might remember earlier in the year we talked with the folks at the United Way about their focus and trying to sharpen up their mission and trying to make things happen in the community. And now it is campaign time, and so we're starting to see some of the results of that lasering of the focus now as they plan the campaign. And here to talk about that today is Erick Stewart. You might know Erick from Stewart Industries, happens to be the chair of the board at the United Way these days. Erick, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. Thank you for the time today. And Chris Sargent is back with us, Chief Operating Officer at the United Way. Good morning, sir.
Morning. How are you?
Great. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So it's that time again. This cycle just keeps on going, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just feels, we get so much excitement from it. We just want to keep it going.
Yeah. Let's give us a little recap on the last year and how you feel about that batch of fundraising as you reset for this year.
Yeah, so last year was really successful. We raised millions of dollars, and that number's big and impressive. But what's really impressive is it comes from tens of thousands of donors giving $1 a week of their time, volunteering an hour a month to a local nonprofit to make impact. And so what we're excited about is that continuation, really valuing both the financial gifts that people will make, so we encourage that, as well as the gift of time, making sure that people are out engaging with community, because it takes all of us together to have the impact we want to have for children and families.
So right there in that little segment, Erick, he said impact twice. That's part of the focus now for this campaign, isn't it? Impact is exactly what we're looking for.
Exactly. It's not part of the focus. It is the focus. So part of our vision is providing value to the whole region and making sure that right around education, income, basic needs, and health, that we have significant impact to create the output in terms of making sure that this region is healthier, vibrant, and serves everyone and adds value to everyone's lives.
This demand, we presume, doesn't go away, does it? I mean, it's there, and we've had folks from the community sit in here and say, we went through that downturn. The tide has turned, although in Battle Creek, we feel a delay in that turnaround. Right. Would you say that's accurate from your vantage point?
Well, I think there's some industries that are doing better, for sure. So we're fortunate to have that in Battle Creek and across the Southwest Michigan region. I think there's also, though, the reality of what we're trying to address in terms of social issues. So if you talk to local superintendents or principals and teachers, they'll tell you that, some of their academics are improving, but kids are coming to school with a multitude of issues. And so they're not just trying to be teachers academically, they're trying to help them with their social emotional issues and some of the challenges they bring. They're feeding them. So we're feeding kids breakfast, as we've talked about before, because they're hungry. And so what we're finding is poverty numbers, our Alice families, our working families who are struggling to make ends meet, those numbers are growing. In fact, 1 in 4 children are in poverty, 1 in 3 Latino children, 1 in 2 African-American children right here in our community are living in poverty.
And these are the gaps we're trying to close.
Correct. Yeah, so we're helping the entire community, especially our most vulnerable. So that's where we get deeper in terms of looking at economic indicators, what's happening in the lives of the homes of the children and families who are struggling financially, as well as looking at things like racial disparities. So what we see is the infant mortality rate is 4 times greater than for a white baby. And so it's important that all children thrive. What's also important is that we look at those disparities and really address the most vulnerable as well.
And in a minute, we'll talk a little bit about how you've delineated very clearly where you want this impact to be focused. I want to just linger for a minute on this notion about this delayed turnaround. Erick, you're in business. Do you see that here? I mean, what some folks have said is, our realizing of the turnaround back to healthier times is delayed.
Yeah, we're primarily automotive. It was our core when we began 16 years ago. So, we are no stranger to the downturn and this turnaround piece. But I think that when people say delay and what have you, when you still see people struggling within the community,
right,
and when you still see these issues that Chris just articulated, that creates this sense of delay. But then you read the news and you say, hey, automotive volumes are up,
right,
and houses are selling, but, there's still folks that are hungry. There's still blight within all communities. And there's still this separation in communities when it comes to education and some of these other pieces, that the impact and the outcomes from that impact will definitely add value to, and we'll see some real transition in the needle moving in years to come.
And the United Way hopes to affect that. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute on WBCK. We're here with Chris Sargent from the United Way and Erick Stewart, Stewart Industries, and, of course, chair of the board right now at United Way. Let's talk about this buzzword impact and what that means. Now, Chris, when you were here last, we talked a bit about the lasering of the mission and trying to address clearly the areas that you've recognized as those with need and saying, okay, we're going to focus here, 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 and here. Now that you've retooled that, and here it is campaign time, we're starting to see this flesh out now in where the allocations are going to go. So where are they going to go? Either one of you.
Well, we talked about that term impact.
Yeah.
And I think that what's changed is there's been a transition from our strategy from the past, where we focus mostly on outcomes and things of that nature. So, the average donor was saying, okay, where's the needle moving in the community? Now we've done a little research and we look at the impact that we start out with of that strategy to begin with. So there's an expected outcome at the end of the day. So on the front end, you trust us with your dollars as a donor, and we know what we're lasering on. You used that term earlier. And at the end of the day, we hope to be celebrating, and we will be celebrating, that key impact of those areas within the community. So we know where we're shooting the arrow, and we know where the target is, and we got to help community guide that direction through volunteerism, through good placement of the allocated dollars, and the good intentions of the community in terms of us coming together as one region to make that happen.
So I guess then what we're saying, Chris, is in the past, we might have said, okay, United Way does this, we help in the community, our goal is $13 million, I'm grabbing that out of the air, and we're this far along in that. Now you're saying, yes, the goal is here, but here's where we're funneling it in these categories.
Yeah, so the goals of education, income, health, and basic needs don't change. And to Erick's point, we used to say to programs that we're applying that we would invest in, just tell us how you're helping as a program.
Right.
Now we're saying in education in the next 15 years, we're going to improve high school graduation rates by 5 percentage points.
Some clear measurables.
Clear measurables. Because what we heard from donors, individuals, companies, major donors, is it's just not that clear. And so you have good outcomes that you can talk about from each program level. But what does 10 years look like? What does 15 years look like? And so now we've set those long-term targets. Here's what's key about that, though. We aren't trying to take the place of schools. We're trying to be a partner with schools, because schools have the one of the biggest impacts on high school graduation rates. Parents do. Community does. And so what United Way looks to do is bring all of those partners together and say, so how do we help with the gaps? How do we measure our progress? And how do we make sure that we're continuously learning and adapting where we need to have the greatest outcome for the community?
Well, that's a huge thing right now in Battle Creek. You know, the public schools in Battle Creek are of some question right now in terms of their future. We've closed school buildings. There's some sort of, I hesitate to say free fall in enrollment, but it's down, and you have to try and adjust these things while the trolley car is moving. You know, you have to figure out how to do this together. Do you see United Way having a hand in that somehow, just by virtue of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. We work very closely, for example, with Battle Creek Public Schools. We work closely with Lakeview Schools. We work closely with all the school districts in the community and the ways that benefit them. So we don't come to them and say, hey, here's our strategy, here's what we're trying to do. We come to them as a good partner and say, help us understand what you need from community. Many cases, a week ago on Monday, I was at Verona Elementary welcoming kids and giving high fives.
Right.
Sometimes it's simple strategies like that, but then to address the long-term third grade reading proficiency, high school graduation rates, it's much more complex, and it needs more commitment from community. Battle Creek Public, Lakeview, any of the school districts aren't going to turn the numbers around just by doing good academics. That's a critical component, but it's also about engaging with community. And I think that's the opportunity for all of us to get engaged and connected back, because I know when I was growing up in schools, there was always other parents there, other community members in the classroom helping out.
So those 4 areas that Chris and Eric have talked about, education, income, health, basic needs. Basic needs is the biggest chunk of that, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. If there are measurables for schools, are there measurables for basic needs in the community? We'll discuss that in just a second on WBCK. WBCK, we're here with Erick Stewart, Stewart Industries, on behalf of United Way today, and Chris Sargent of the United Way as well, here in Battle Creek and Kalamazoo. We've been talking about these 4 areas for your allocations over the course of this campaign: education, income, health, and basic needs. And of all of those things, basic needs, almost $2.2 million there, and that's the biggest chunk of the 4. Boy, what does that tell us right now? And secondarily to that, how do you measure whether you're making an impact there and changing? Like you talked about education and changing the graduation rates. That's a pretty clear deliverable. How do you look at basic needs and figure that out?
You know, basic needs is the kind of the linchpin or the conduit between all these other areas.
Right.
You know, it's my personal belief that when it comes down to basic needs, every human being needs 3 things: food, love, and shelter. Okay. 2 of those the United Way can address, but through volunteerism, you know, we provide love for the community and what have you. So that that shelter and that food piece and other basic needs, that helps us in education, it helps us around income, it helps us around health. Because to have a healthier livelihood and what have you, and take care of some of those needs, those are the most important things sometimes in our lives, because if that's out of balance, you can't stabilize those other areas. It becomes a bigger challenge, right?
Well, and certainly that's one of the challenges in school. If I come to school hungry, then I'm not focused on what I'm learning.
Absolutely, and I'm a big brother to a middle school student here in Battle Creek, and last year when we were talking, he was mentioning to me that he had been diagnosed as malnourished. And I thought to myself, so you're struggling in math and some other subjects. It's pretty clear why. If you're hungry every day, you're not able to do that. And that's an example of where partnership really comes in. So between the Kellogg Company, Battle Creek Public Schools, and United Way, every kid now in elementary and middle school is getting breakfast every day as a part of the district. 1,000 more breakfasts being served every morning, and it only cost us about $30,000 to do that because we leveraged other programs, federal and otherwise, to be able to take advantage of that. So an investment in United Way is a good partnership investment. It's also a good investment in terms of leveraging other resources, state, federal, and otherwise, to be able to maximize the impact.
So what's the measurable there then when they tell you we don't need that breakfast program anymore? How do you measure that?
Well, you hope that maybe that is true, and then we move on to other areas. But the reality is most of the time it's about setting up the systems, the core systems, making sure utility assistance is available, making sure food's available. And a lot of these things are hand-up opportunities. So they're not creating dependency. Somebody's struggling, a family's struggling right now in this moment. We help them. We get them back on track. We keep them in their homes. We keep the heat on in the winter, keep the food on the table when they need it. Then we address, to Erick's point, the bigger issues. So if it's an income, financial stability issue, do you have the workforce skills to get the better paying job? But before you get that job, you probably need transportation to get there. So maybe we can help with that in terms of a basic need. So we're measuring the outputs of what it is that we're trying to accomplish there to get the outcomes that we want in the education, income, and health areas.
Yeah, so this basic need thing at almost $2.2 million, we talk about the hand-up sort of situation. As a business owner, though, Erick, you can understand this, that some people generally are not making what they used to make. And that's a challenge for them. That's a challenge for you. It's a challenge for everybody, right?
Absolutely. You know, that that piece about income is very important. because it gives us the basis to take care of those things and take care of our families. We take that very seriously at Stewart Industries. And so we make sure we partner with agencies like the United Way. If I'm the board chair, I'm adding value in a different way to my own organization to make sure that, the investment that's in the community is placed in the right area to help folks like folks that work for me and other companies. It's sometimes all of us are 2 paychecks away from being in a situation that you may need these United Way services. So, at Stewart Industries, we're engaged all the time, and the supports of not just the United Way, but all of our partner agencies in making sure that folks are aware that support exists and that they are aware that United Way's direction going forward is set with not just the basic things that we used to do before, but new innovative ways and new innovative approaches, such as what Chris talked about. 4 years ago, breakfast in the classroom was just kind of a theory, right?
Yeah, right.
So now you ask some of these teachers that these kids are getting fed and they're paying attention from the jump during the day, what the outcomes are at the end of the day. I guarantee you it's kind of a shift for them, and then you can do other things. And then there's other enhancement type programs that go along with that are very basic to that child's development, and it supports that family's development when that child gets home. That child is more attentive, that child is more engaged, and that family is better for it at the end of the day.
I'm running out of time, but let's talk for a second about money here. So do you still talk about the total at the top, or would you rather focus in on these individual goals, Chris?
Yeah, we still talk about the total. Obviously, we can't do this work without the investment. So you're talking just in those 4 areas, and real quickly, over $6 million. We've got additional $1 million that's going to go out later this fall. I mean, it's big numbers, and it's important, and it's critical. What we realized is the individual donor, quite honestly, doesn't care about the big total. What they care about is can I make an investment, $1 a week, $10 a week, whatever level, that's going to have the impact that you can measure, and can I invest my time in, is that equally valued? So we have a financial goal. We also have a goal of having 3,000 more volunteers this year engaged with our community. Both of those are equally and critically important.
And they're doable. So if someone's listening, what's the next step they can take?
Go to changethestory.org. That's our website that's got all these success stories. You can donate online. You can get information about volunteering once, a couple times a month, ongoing every week in our schools as an example. So that's the best way to do it. Stop on down to the office. We're located right downtown Battle Creek on Michigan in the Riverwalk Center. We'd be happy to have conversation and engage. We need volunteers on boards and committees at our organization and our 75-plus partners. So those are opportunities. There is an easy way for people to get engaged and to give to support this direction. All they got to do is changethestory.org or stop on down and be able to do that.
All right, changethestory.org is the website. Take a look if we piqued your interest. We'll be in touch again soon and pick up where we leave off.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Chris and Eric, we appreciate your time today.